Shall we? Oh, yeah. Right there on the wall. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So, do we have changes to the agenda?
Yes, I would make a motion that we add 3 resignations to the consent agenda. Mark Haley, JRMS English teacher, effective August 15th, 2022. Leonard Schwartz, CHS English and Social Studies teacher, effective August 15th, 2022. Madeline Garland, JGS permanent substitute, effective August 15th, 2022. And I would also like to add a nomination for Kyle Perkins, CHS English Social Studies teacher, effective August 22nd, 2022. I would also like to give Reuben Duncan the authority, would be where we do this one? Give Reuben Duncan the authority to add 2 more students for 2 more students to be able to enroll into the JGS school system.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Charlie. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I have a motion, to seal the the non-public minutes from August 15th.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right. Charlie moves, Paul seconds. Thank you both. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion to remove the public and non-public minutes from August 1st.
Okay,
I'll second that.
thank you, Kim. Thank you, Christine. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that was 5-0 on all 3 of those. And I think we've got our consent agenda properly modified. All right, great. Time for public comments.
All right. Do you want me to go through the spiel or not? Currently, we only have 2 employees on the Zoom call. Obviously, with nobody in physical attendance.
I think if they're employees, we can probably assume that they should know the
Okay.
the protocol.
We have 1 that I believe is a resident, 1 that I believe is not. So yeah, public comment session for you folks that are on there. Obviously, again, follow policy. Not seeing them raise their hands or anything like that. So I guess we could always see if more people come in later.
Okay, so in other words, there's nobody's asking to comment at this time.
Not that I'm seeing. Like I said, no hands raised, no chats, no anything like that.
Okay. I know if it was me on Zoom, it would take me a couple of minutes to figure out what to click, you know.
Yeah, the third or fourth thing. Yeah, I finally figured it out.
So if anybody does raise their hand after we move on, just let us know and we'll try to accommodate them. And we will have a second public comments period at the end of the meeting. And we will have new public comments procedures and protocols starting on September 19th, I believe. Did everybody see the email from the New Hampshire School Board Association? A law apparently was passed changing the requirement for public comments. We're now obliged to allocate at least 30 minutes for public comments. And it's, the guidance includes recommendations that we have that public comment time early in the meeting, in the beginning of the meeting. So I would say we're largely in compliance. We might have to make some adjustments, but I think our policy is 15 minutes generally, and we've been tended to be flexible on that.
Allowing people to speak for that amount of time.
Right. Well, no, the amount of time that each person can speak is only whatever we said. But, you know, I think the 3 minutes that we typically have said is probably in line with the recommendations.
I've got it.
However, we have to allow, if there are many people who want to speak, we, you know, we have to give them enough time, at least a half hour.
Okay, right.
I think I'd say we've been more than flexible with that. Some of these meetings have gone to 11 o'clock at night because of the comments.
I think the thing that probably we're gonna have to investigate is currently we only allow residents to make public comments. And the way the statute is written, we need to get some advice from the town council in terms of from the school council relative to whether we continue to do that or not.
Is that something we'll go over in policy meeting?
Well, if we change the policy, yeah.
Oh,
But I
like, so
mean-
the policy does say that it's residents only, even if people teach in this district, but that's something we can go over. Okay.
All right. So moving right on then to the superintendent's report.
All right, great. We have 4 major topics to talk about tonight. Probably leave a few items in there as well as they relate to things that we are talking about. There was a session today just before our non-public where I think it was 5 to 6 or 5 to 6:30 maybe. The middle school had a cookout for 6th grade families. So I think about 70 individuals roughly had attended that. And there was plenty of food and there were people playing outside. Not on the grass, we were trying to grow some grass, but you know, it was it seems like things were going well. So the topics, we're getting close to the beginning of school. There's a lot going on at the beginning of the school year. And this year is no different than really the last couple, in the sense of needing to still talk about some of the health items that are out there for conversation. And so we'll look at the CDC updated recommendations for COVID-19, what that means to us, what it doesn't mean to us, what we might want to have for discussion. And I'll throw some recommendations in there as well. Number 2, just a sample set of grades, final grades versus assessment data. We had some goals last year that we set with one of the departments. And so I wanted to report out on how they met or did not meet, you know, those goals for last year. And then talk about what we're going to be doing for the upcoming year with this type of data to help support our continued curriculum instruction and assessment progress. 3, just an update, quick update with the Franklin Pierce University Partnership. Met with them today again. Continue to make good progress each time. And then an overview of a multi-year plan that needs to be coming to the board within the next month. And so, and we'll be talking about it next week in more detail at the goals committee. And then it will be brought to the school board for conversation, consideration, adoption at some point in time, but just kind of some large concepts so that you're aware of some of the conversations that we're having as we move forward. It will not be hyper specific. So that's for a later time frame. So COVID-19, there is not a lot of guidance out there right now. The state has not provided much, if any. The Department of Education has not provided much, if any. And calling some of my colleagues asking, do we need reopening frameworks, reopening plans? I had the individuals 2 or 3 individuals I've called and said no. I've heard no talk about that sort of thing. That being said, the CDC has put some new guidance out, and so some of this right here provide some of that information. There's new guidance on. Well, this has to do with the state, right? We're currently in the Cheshire County, we're in kind of the medium level, not the high level. Yeah, and there wasn't much from NHDPHS, so we've covered this slide right here. But what the CDC changes was because they are the group that has made some adjustments. You can see there, and I'll read them because they're a little bit small print. There's no longer a distinction between vaccinated and unvaccinated for various guidelines. So you're not saying if you're vaccinated, you can be in this category. If you're unvaccinated in this category, everyone's in the same pool. No longer need to quarantine when exposed. So in the past, you did all this contact tracing, you're exposed, you need to quarantine and look for symptoms and do all that. They do recommend that people wear a high quality mask for 10 days and get tested in the midpoint if they are to contract it. They recommend masking for schools and communities with high transmission levels and a few other scenarios, but again, we're in according to how New Hampshire measures things, we're in the medium transmission at this point in time. That is an area that if you wanted to have a conversation around as a board saying, okay, kind of like a matrix of sorts, you could do that. That being said, the governor last year indicated that schools could not mandate mask wearing. So I don't think that has changed. Routine testing no longer recommended unless transmission levels are high. So we're not saying, you have people constantly test every week or so like that. We weren't doing that anyway. And then those with symptoms should still go home and get tested. And so I would say that's probably pretty standard with a variety of things. If kids are having headaches, sore throats, cough, and so forth, they'd be sent home anyway. I think the guidance would still be get tested just for your benefit and for making decisions. And then those who test positive still should isolate at least for 5 days and then go from there. So if we flip to the next slide. Just some recommendations. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at how the media is treating it. I'm looking at kind of what the hospitalization rates are and so forth. The severity, we're not talking about the severity of the virus much anymore. And I think that there's a huge statement when the State Department doesn't put any real guidance out in New Hampshire. CDC has a national type of guidance, and New Hampshire is different than Mass, different than Arizona, different than California. It would be nice to have a little more local information, and I do think that we should listen to local information once that has come. I do know that we have nurses who meet regularly with the state, or in the past they have not received a lot of information about guidelines, whether they're going to need to be reporting or anything like that this year. Cases, I don't know how you determine whether there's high transmission or not if we're not reporting those cases, but I don't know as though the infrastructure remains. I would say it's with us, and we treat it like other illnesses. We already have a situation where if people have fevers, they aren't to be in the school without for 24 hours. Without the use of fever reducing medication. So I think we continue on with that. I think we can have masks are still optional, certainly similar to how we ended last year. I think we should publicize and communicate what the CDC recommends on their website, give people access to that so that they can make good decisions for themselves if they or decisions regardless what they think is best for themselves. And then I do think there may be some value to continuing to monitor some trends. I meet with the nurses next week. We'll talk about whether we want to kind of look at some data. But here's the real issue: the data becomes not very accurate if you don't have stricter guidelines. The stricter our guidelines, the more accuracy we can get with the information. the looser the guidelines, the more we treat it like other illnesses and so forth. The data is going to be if people report it to us, you know, so it's going to be based upon someone's. You know,
Anecdotal.
how, yeah, exactly. They're gonna be like, oh, I thank you. We will take the recommendations from the CDC. We'll let the nurse know there's a COVID case. Because there's no recommendation for telling someone else that you were next to someone with COVID anymore, or because that individual isn't needing to quarantine as a result of being in close contact. So you can kind of keep on following that pattern. But certainly I'm willing to have a discussion and we have the infrastructure to put some tighter guidelines if the board feels that that's the avenue to take. And then I think if there are any changes, if New Hampshire does come out with some information, if our nurses are finding more information or finding some trends within the school, I think it's important to bring to this body right here and talk about that and see if there's anything that we need to do. That's really what I have for COVID-19. So if you want to stop at this spot and if there's any questions or comments.
Yes, Charlie.
We've had one inquiry already about monkeypox. What are the current guidance on monkeypox?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked at the current guidance yet for monkeypox. I know that they were saying it wasn't highly spreadable. I don't.
My understanding is that it's spreadable with close contact.
Mhm.
When we have children, naturally, most people are susceptible because I believe the last smallpox vaccination was in 72, 82, somewhere in that time period. So most children haven't been vaccinated for smallpox, and smallpox does protect you against monkeypox, I understand.
Mhm.
But the smallpox vaccination, but as of right now, we don't have any kind of large amounts of vaccine for monkeypox.
Mhm.
So I was just wondering if there's,
Updated on the 11th, which would have been last week from CDC. They recommend that people with monkeypox remain isolated at home or at another location for the duration of the illness. But that might not be possible in all situations. Prioritizing isolation and infection control strategies helps prevent transmission while balancing the impact of this infection on the daily lives of people diagnosed with monkeypox. These considerations may change as we learn more from the 2022 global outbreak of monkeypox.
do we still practice cleaning at the end of the day?
Yeah. So we have all those strategies still in place, and we're fairly close to being fully staffed with them. That we're in a better spot than we have been for a long time with our custodial cleaning supply, cleaning organizations and people. Actually, I don't think we're using a cleaning organization right now because we have enough staff for our current needs. I think as school starts, we still need one or two individuals to be completely fully staffed across the district. I think the holes in the staffing are here with this building. Like I saw the pictures from RMS, place looks great inside, according to the pictures. I have to get over there tomorrow.
I know we don't have anything in the state on monkeypox.
No, there's not much out there right now. I don't know, any thoughts about COVID this year, this time around?
My concern is always, how are we gonna keep our teachers healthy? And everybody's testing at home, so we have no idea what the numbers really are.
Yeah.
I would say that in my little business, farm business, there's a lot of COVID that I've never seen before. So I think it's pretty prominent in our county, or at least our area. So that's always my concern, is how to keep our classrooms functioning.
Christine, what do you mean when you say you're seeing COVID in your business?
I have a lot of never, prior to this summer, I've never had a customer with COVID in the summer. And we have, we had set up all these protocols, we'll do deliveries, whatever, and we never had to do them, but this summer we're doing it.
So you're having people advising you that
Yeah.
they've got
I
COVID.
think we've had 5 in our small group,
Wow.
and people showing up with masks saying, I tested positive, but I'm here anyway, but I'm wearing a mask. Thank you.
But I think that, we're finding that COVID is becoming treated more and more like the flu.
Yep.
Because of our knowledge of it, number one, and number two, because of the availability of vaccines.
Yep.
And right now, it's really up to people's choice. They have an option of masking or not. They have an option of vaccines or not.
Yep.
And
It's true.
And I think that the risk to our students, in terms of, what's the word we're looking for here?
Severity.
Severity, right? In terms of severity is a lot different than when we first started with it. When we first started with COVID, we didn't know. We thought it was a high threat to everybody, and it was, especially the elderly. But I think now that we understand it better and we understand the severity risks better, we're better able to cope with it, I think.
I certainly don't want to put it on the school nurses to have to do the social tracing, contact tracing anymore. And they were frontline workers dealing with trying to send students home and get them tested, and I know that was really asking a lot of them.
Yeah, they did an amazing job. It was not easy. And it was not always welcome.
I've met a number of people in the past couple of months who have contracted COVID. And they've all, done okay. In other words, some of them have said that they felt pretty bad for a day or two, but nobody had life-threatening illness. Having said that, though, the national numbers are that there are still people dying, and while they're not like they were 2 years ago, they're still significant. And I think what you said, Ruben, about our ability to respond to changing circumstances is important, because I'm sure that the state is not going to forget about this. And if cases or severity changes, if they rise, then I'm sure we're going to start to hear things. And I think our nurses are going to have to continue, their role may change somewhat. Instead of doing some of the things they've been doing, they may have to just keep their ear to the ground to see what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely have to continue to be in communication, be able to follow the news, what's going on, be able to inform people. I think that we have a duty to inform. I mean, actually, the presentation that I have here, the discussion tonight is going to talk about communication, going to talk about community, is going to talk about areas of weaknesses and so forth, and things that we need to be stronger in to become a more agile organization, which I think we've been working toward for a few years, but taking some larger steps in that direction. And that also means with with COVID and other types of illnesses, being able to respond. And I get tired of the word because it was overused, but pivot is that idea, and say, all right, we're going to go in this direction now, we're going to go in this direction, and be able to handle that and not put everyone in such a stressful position where people shut down. I think that whether it's health or other types of scenarios, society is moving rapidly and changing continuously, and we need to be able to make our adjustments. And we need to have the data and have a better culture of data and inquiry.
And sharing data.
Yeah. So.
Well, I suppose as a representative in this, with the other school districts, through your superintendent's association and other groups, I'm sure you'll pay close attention to that.
Yeah. So the next topic unless you want to move on and make any decisions on this right now. I recommend we don't start off with a reopening framework.
Okay.
I just don't think we have.
This as an item on the agenda later.
Yeah, I think it's good to have it on the agenda later. I need to talk to the nurses, they haven't. They're not here most of the summertime, so having that conversation is tougher. They'll be here next week. But also, we just, like I said, the state hasn't given much information. I don't think that we should be acting upon made up information. All right, last year, we had some middle level or middle school math goals. We started off the summer. And I have to commend them, and I'll be commending them later in a more public way. But the math teachers, one who has moved along to another district to teach math at the high school level, closer to where he lives, his data is in here as well. But the three of them, the three individuals of middle school, really took some pretty seriously important risks. And they had made 3 goals, and these 3 goals will be meeting with the team again and with a new member to the middle school math department and talking about where we stand. Some of this information was shared at relative to goal number 3 was shared at the education committee and is viewable online. So you have that information if you want to go and look at that. The number 1 is still in progress, but number 2 is what I wanted to focus on because we hadn't really done that. And so by the end of the school year, the middle level will have 80% alignment with summative grades and summative state assessments. So this group decided to pilot, and they were the group in the entire school to pilot the 1 to 4 grading last year. And so along with that, they felt in order to stay true to that, they were going to need to partly do number 1, have better definition, which needs to continue on, and of what it means to be at the various levels of understanding, but that they wanted to make sure that there was that they weren't having grade inflation and that they were being very accurate, that they were providing parents and learners information that would match other information that they would be getting later on, like from the state assessment and WEA or any type of assessment like that. So I wouldn't say we met that goal across the board, but we made progress across the board in all of the areas, and I'll show you in just a second. In years past, we've had it in where this specific goal started. The history is we've had situations where we've been about 90% out of alignment with the New Hampshire SAS and their results and so forth, which meaning we had 1 to 2 letter grades inflated beyond what they would test at, which is not really, you can have one person have a bad day or 2 people here have a bad day. To have a lot of them, to have 90% off is not what you would be wanting. So we're just trying to have that. Years ago, Misty was here. She used the words guaranteed and viable curriculum. This is that piece where we're trying to make sure it's viable and that it's guaranteed to be what they need and in their lives and beyond. I should say their schooling and their lives beyond. So we go to the next slide. This is grade 6. And so I'll explain this graph right here. This is a graph, and Leslie's been working on different types of graphs, and I thought this one really spoke the best. This is not about proficient or not proficient. This is just about goal number 2. You can see that NHSAS and classroom match. So about 33% or 32%, that green area, they were right on track with one another. There's a small percentage right up there where actually the New Hampshire SAS was 1 point higher than the classroom. So the classroom grade was actually lower than how the student achieved on the state assessment. And then you can see, however, that you've got about we have a ways to go here. We've got about 60%, not quite 60% of the population that is scoring a point below or 2 points below than what their classes were. So the 1 point variation on both ways, that actually is an improvement. The 33% is an improvement. We got a lot closer. That 2 point range, that 2 kind of spot where someone may have gotten a 2 on let's say a 1 on their New Hampshire SAS, but had a 3 for their grade, meaning they were graded at a B or an A or something like that, like a low A, high B, and they were shown to be substantially not proficient. So that's what we don't want. In the past, we've had a lot more of that. So that's what these are saying right here. It's we're not aligned. We're
Got it.
trying to align the expectations at a higher level and making sure that our communication is improved by providing clear feedback and have it match other data. In this case, just standardized data that every school is measured by. Go to the next one. 7th grade, you'll see that they achieved a lot closer to that goal, whereas they had a very small percentage. I think it was maybe 3%. 3% of the individuals had a New Hampshire SAS score lower than their grade. So their grade inflation was maybe, you know, like 3%. That's nothing. That's someone who did poorly on a test. You know, that's legit. That's where you want to be. Apart from the fact that we do have some issues on the other end. So this means that this person probably had, like, you got 60% of the individuals are right on track, 80% was our goal, but we have another 25, 30, is that 36? No, yeah,
Blue.
yeah, the rest of it's another third of the population actually had the reverse go on. Yes.
Could you tell me what the X and Y axis are?
Yeah, the y-axis is the points above or below 0. If they're on that 0, that means everything was the same.
So the 0 is the class grade.
The class grade, yep, you want the red line and the blue line to match.
Right, okay.
And so then -1 means that the state assessment scored 1 point below what their 1 to 4 rating was at the school
So
level.
that's a deviation.
Yes, a deviation. And then you'd have the other, you know, you can see it go the other way as well.
Right.
So we had, in this case, a couple kids score much higher on the state assessment than they got for their class grade. That's something that's important to look at as well.
Well, what is that axis?
The x-axis,
No, the y-axis. I've got a line going down and I don't know what it means. I got a step in the middle, but I don't know what that represents. Does that represent a student? Does that represent a percentile? Or I don't know what it represents.
yeah, this really, there shouldn't be a step. It should really just be a, you had a point down at the -1 there. It's just connecting the whole line. That's what the purpose of that step is. The data that you're looking at is the horizontal, like all that pie chart data is the horizontal lines.
All right, I got it 0 and I'm going along and I see.
It's not the best chart for what he's trying to represent.
What's that?
It's not the best chart for what they're trying to represent. They could have used different charts, just
Maybe
all it is
bar
saying the
graphs.
percentage of students that met their grade that they had. Opposed to students that were performed below what their grade average was, with students that performed above grade average. So if you look at the pie chart, the
Can't read
green
the pie
one
chart, but-
represents the biggest section of blue in there. The blue one represents the second biggest section of blue in there. so on and so forth.
The blue represents, you had a third of the individuals, a little over a third of the individuals score 1 point higher on the New Hampshire SAS than what they got on their report cards. You have, if the blue line matches the red line,
Yep.
then what you see, which is that 50 some odd percent, close to 60%, that means their grades matched their New Hampshire SAS. And as you go into on the opposite sides, you can see that, all right, if you get to the point where they have that little horizontal, the very small horizontal line at the number 2, that means there's a small population that scored 2 points higher than they did in their report card. And then I think there may have been one person who actually, was off the chart on it, but
Looks like it.
and one person below. So that's kind of the idea. So this way, right here, this is the closest to meeting the goal, whereas there's really almost zero grade inflation right here, which is what we were looking for. Now, also, you're wondering, like, what's happening at the end with a few students who are scoring off the chart. They might be bored in class, not paying a lot of attention, things of that nature, not feeling like the day-to-day work is all that meaningful to them.
Right.
But they have the information, they know what they're doing. And then, and this group had the highest growth out of all the middle school grades.
Mhm.
So they had a long way to go from 6th grade. They still didn't get to our goal for proficiency as a whole class, but they were well on their way and they grew significantly more than the other groups did. So, which points to the fact that at least we're communicating properly, and that when this group goes to the 8th grade, what the teacher can say, what you see is what they are. It's not like, oh, I got all these kids are all A students, then suddenly like, oh, but they don't know how to add. That's not what you're going to see here. And then the next one is 8th grade. That one was more similar to 6th grade in the percentage of those who aligned, but was a lot weaker in the areas where the grades were inflated about 60% of the time there. So that's some work that we have to do. And that I thought was going to be different at the algebra level, and the 8th grade, because there's 2 maths at the 8th grade level, and it wasn't much different. So we have some exploring we need to do there for the 8th grade math and what we're expecting. I think our expectations have to be a little bit higher, a little bit better communicated, and we need to be on point with how we're reporting feedback to our learners. So there's some areas of growth, mostly in this area right here. We'll continue to monitor that. We're doing this for our AP results, our science results, our English language arts results. All of these are going to go to the team so that they can have conversations about how to better align what they're doing and what they're expecting and what they're teaching, and how they're assessing, and how they know if students understand. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, this is actually fascinating. And, but I do agree, I appreciate Paul's explanation, because I was having trouble reading the graphs, so. I'd like to see us continue to work with how we present this data so that, not only we can understand it, but also the public, can
Sure.
be- so-
Sadly enough, this was the one that I understood the best.
Yeah.
So when
No, I understood exactly where you're
I
going.
looked at where this made complete sense to me. It's like, all right, the
Okay.
red line and the blue line need to match, and then anything above is,
Mhm.
they scored higher, and everything below was. So I thought it was fairly slick. But that being said, because we're
Okay.
working on wanting to get a data dashboard, improve inquiry and use of data, as we just discussed, across the district this year, that's one of the really strong pushes that we're continuing to try to make through our collaborative processes and teams. We have ordered a more sophisticated data reporting software. This is Excel.
Yeah.
This is clumsy. When you're dealing with so much information, it takes a long time. So we got I wouldn't say the best one out there, but we got a decent one that was like under $500 that we can use and can make some good dynamic
You,
reports.
you mean a software program? Is
A
that-
software, yeah, Leslie is the one who's working on this, and so she's used as a crystal reporting or something like that, and so we've gone through and we looked at some of the higher end ones, and then the reports that were made there, they look very similar.
Yeah.
I just think it might not be quite as smooth as some of the newer ones, but it's still very current.
My problem was that I couldn't see the numbers. in
Yeah.
the Pie chart. Because I couldn't see the numbers, I couldn't make the correlation.
Oh, you need both in order
Yeah.
to make sense of this. Yes.
I have
Yeah,
that.
that's why we have the two there together. Otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So if you go to this next one, the FPU partnership. Just real quick, our conversations keep on going well. We have not signed the original MOU, but that's, if everything is good on our end. From a standpoint of our business office and everything, it's just in the hands of their business office. And because they haven't been necessarily there all the time, it's still there. So hopefully this week, we're gonna be able to finalize that. Regardless, we're moving forward and have been moving forward as though it has been signed. And so we're ready to get rolling on the August 30th for all the undergraduate individuals who will be over at RMS is gonna be the first semester, probably JGS the second semester for their class. And then there is a class being held here, but it's a smaller group of individual secondary individuals who are interested in secondary education. And then there's a second MOU. Eventually, we plan on morphing the two together, but they're still two separate entities where we're looking at graduate level students. And so how can we utilize them? And so we've developed several internship possibilities. Some of them are just as simple as they can apply for our jobs and we can hire them and they can be staff members. Or another type of intern concept that we got from another actually location in New Hampshire, more up north, that they were trying out is the grad students who are doing most of their work online, they're over here, we'll pay for their housing up to a certain point, we get a discount on it from the college, and then they get like $10 an hour or whatever to work within our schools and work with our kids. It turns out to be about $1,000 a month. Or it could be less, but we decided to go with the hourly rate one because it has less red tape with the state Department of the hiring, the job department, what do you call it? The labor, thank you, the labor board. So they had some paperwork that we would have to have done in a different way if we had gone like a stipend route or something like that. And also, this puts more accountability. We'll have a track record of everything that's being done. And so it's better for our business office as well for audit purposes and so forth, to make sure that we know where the money is going, why it's going, where it's going. And so we have two potential graduate interns. One very likely, I've created a school, an advertisement, a school spring advertisement just for FPU internships, so that those individuals have been sent the link directly and they can apply. We want them to apply because they need to say whether they've been convicted of felonies and things like that, and we have that on record so that we get their fingerprints and so forth. But so that's neat. So we'll be piloting that this year with any luck, and hopefully we'll know soon. And then we're preparing, and I say we because it's really more Nick, but I like to throw myself in the mix. Doing a joint press release with the college, so that should go out before the start of school. Again, we want to wait till at least the first MOU is signed before we send something out. So once that's signed, we're planning on having that go out, and then we'll go from there with whatever other publicity we want to put out there.
I think it's great, the work you've done with that.
Well, they've been nice to work with. The people have been, Joan in particular. Sonia's always been great. She's the individual who kind of coordinates everything over there in the education department. Jed is one of the deans, but Joan is the director over of the education department. She's been there a couple of years, and so she's had some prior experience working with schools in this type of capacity, so it made this a lot easier than perhaps it could have been. But we're moving forward. And there are some side benefits as well to all of this that we hadn't even thought of, that I think that are gonna come out, which is neat. We'll see. And then lastly, just 3 slides, and we've been going on for a bit, a lot of information. This will make more sense when we put it into a whole document with a lot more explanation. But in general, if you look at our strategic design, if you look at our from 2017-18, when it was built, and you look at what our beliefs about learners and the learning, about teaching our learners, and about our community with our learners, everything just keeps on cycling around to communication, which we know has been a huge push for ourselves, and things have improved as a result of that, but we got to do a lot better in many ways. Collaboration, so both internal and external collaboration, and then community in general, so both internal and external community and the weaving therein. So with something like the FPU partnership, for instance, a good example of where all of those circles come together. And so those are where the heavier projects and goals are going to be, is in that intersection of the 3 circles there, the Venn diagram. There will be other things that probably follow that we're doing, or that we want to do, that are complementary, that would follow into maybe just community and communication. That might be just like having events for the community, and making sure that it's advertised well and things like that, where there's some collaboration involved. That's not really the heavy push in that area. Or it could be collaboration with the community, and it's more, we're not communicating it out because we're really just trying to work with one another behind the scenes to be able to build things, so later on the communication can take place once we have built some good relationships. So that's kind of what I would say. This is a summary of the multi-year plan in concept. Go to the next one. We talked about being agile and being able to make movement, and in a way that when things come our way, when technology shifts, when research, comes out that we need to be doing some things differently, when kids are coming in with different skill sets, or not, or lack of skill sets, or whatever it is, or what we're trying to do, is the world is ever changing constantly. And so we need to be a system that has a structure that is able to adapt. And right now, like most public schools, like most schools in general, we have a traditional hierarchy. We have a superintendent. That superintendent kind of splits off into then looking over, here's the SAU over to your right, here's the schools. This would obviously be a lot bigger. You'd have more principals, more assistant principals, and so forth, but it's a general concept. And so when you see this, it's not that this structure would necessarily change from a standpoint of who's evaluating whom and so forth, and maybe where there's kind of a chain of command, but it's not how you want to have people understand your functionality as an organization. And so the next slide is where we've been moving toward. I think it actually depicts more of what we are trying to do and trying to become. I adapted this from a current business model, basically, from the highest 8 to 10 achieving companies in the world right now, a lot of them being tech companies and so forth. Changed the language up a little bit, you had to interpret things differently. But the idea that the SAU, while there's still a superintendent and that person's kind of charged with overseeing this and that and the other thing, the SAU as a whole, with its directors, managers, and administrative assistants and so forth, they're functioning, operating as a resource. So it's the resource hub. So when I say like Leslie, who's my administrative assistant, who she does a few of the letters that I need her to send, or she's answering some emails here and there, and she's doing things of that nature. But really what we need her to do is a much higher level of support for the schools in the area of what her skill set is in data, and also creating efficiencies through, like for instance, all the digital routing and stuff like that we've done over the past 2 years to greatly enhance how we do business across and efficiently and effectively.
What digital routing stuff you mean?
I don't know, have we ever not presented on that? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, that's been brought up a couple times. It's the changes in like nomination forms, budget transfer forms, all those different forms where now you're receiving a digital version of that instead of having that paper copy just
Okay,
delivered to different departments and signed here and turned it, brought into the digital space, something updated, then brought back out, signed. It's now all through a digital process.
Teachers don't have to travel from Ringe over to the business office to sign a little stipend sheet when it's comes right into their email.
Sure.
All of special ed has revamped
all the
all their practices. It is completely more efficient. All their 80% of their storage is now online in a data storage. We're going to do the same thing with guidance and so forth. So a lot of that work has happened. It's created an incredible efficiency compared to what was in existence before. But that's touching every group. And so these teams might be like, you could call them teams within the schools, you can call them schools, you can call them whatever, but then this model makes you understand that you're not just functioning internally, the SAU and the schools, they're also functioning with partners. Now partners can be parents, and so it stresses the importance of working with parents more, and that's where that communication, collaboration, and community comes together. FPU right now, we just talked about that a little bit. I know there's a lot more to talk about it, but they would actually, in this model, if we defined the teams as schools, or if we did, or even as grade levels right now, or subject areas, FPU actually would be a partner on every single one of those places starting in 3 weeks. Keene State, we are waiting back to hear from them on a grant that we've been trying to get together on some work that we're doing with MTSSB across the district. If we are awarded that, they then automatically become a partner all the way through the elementary school for the next 5 years. And they help financially, they help with supports and all that kind of stuff. If that takes place, it isn't specifically for the high school, middle school, but you see, even their impact allows other resources to free up. And so you're taking this model right here and you're focusing on collaboration, so that if team yellow, let's say the team, this bright yellow over here to the left, if they're working on something and they're innovating and they've got a great idea, let's call them the math department in the middle school, right? They piloted 4-to-1 grading in Otis last year. Another team came on and said, I like what you're doing. I see that you're having some results, even just with, some of the results that we had were just better, and people were excited. I want to try that as well. So now, rather than competition, you got collaboration internally going, okay, we're going to work together. I'm going to drop what I'm doing and I'm going to get on to what you're doing. So that actually took place. You could see it happen toward the end of last year, where we have every single group of individuals in the school, apart from one department, who is going and implementing 1-to-4 grading and assessment tools and Otis all next year in the middle school, high school. But it happened because the teams influenced the teams, not a top-down push. The resource was there. It was provided. It was something that we actually spelled out in our strategic design, that we would move in that direction. But rather than saying, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, people had success, were able to have some opportunity to take risk, and then others joined in on that. It's very similar to a video game type of company where we're working on this new game, we're working on a different idea. Wow, these people are really making traction. I'm going to leave this group, we're going to join this group, and we're going to make them even better. That's the idea behind this type of what I would call innovation-oriented ecosystem, where everyone's taking care of and protecting one another and has the same interest and the same goals going forward. But it's not about an ego, it's not an ego system where, it's not a top-down type of approach. It's trying to get to a point where you're really in harmony with the community and with each other internally as well. Takes a long time, but that's, to me, the ideal direction that we want to be going. And so all of our focus, once we get this and we start to operate more and more like this, we're going to be able to be a lot more agile, a lot more adept to change. This is a lot more innovation taking place. which would rely on something called collective efficacy, which means as a group, we're willing to take some risks and work together. And even if we fail, that's okay. We're gonna keep on improving.
No matter how much we fail.
Yeah, failure, I mean,
Okay,
it doesn't come out the way we want. Yeah.
questions? I mean, this is really, are there questions out there or no? All right, so I just have one. I asked, well, I guess it's a dumb question, but you know, the digital routing,
It's not a dumb question.
well, it's
I
just,
just,
you know,
I assume that,
but I mean, I really have seen a lot of it, right? Just like tonight, all the forms that Nick sent out, and I can imagine within the organization, it's really efficient, not having to come over from Ringe to sign a personnel document, et cetera, even coming from the high school. But I do have a question about data security and data storage, you know, are you, how confident can we be that 3 years from now, I'm looking for a document that was here or it was available, you know, because you made it available, is it still going to be there? And what are the chances that, you know, that some student, just for fun, getting good at technology, does a SAU 47 cyber attack?
I mean, that would be a question far beyond my scope, because I don't deal with any of the data storage or anything like that. My understanding.
So you're saying it's Ruben's?
Well, I mean,
I have a little more knowledge on this one, but
yeah, I mean, it's much more of a tech question or a Ruben question, or maybe even a Leslie question, just
it's,
because.
yeah, probably, it's definitely a Mike question. We have about 2 or 3 levels of backup. And so we have some offsite backup and things are backed up on a regular basis. A lot of our documents that we're talking about that are of importance to keep and to make sure that we have on file, that's the process. We're putting it all into a digital offsite in the cloud storage with DocStar. DocStar can make documents official too. So that's where all, like, for instance, all our IEPs, everything, they're all there. So when and those are probably some of the more important documents that we have in the school district. So when we're looking for something, we're not having to sort through files and so forth. Type in a couple words and boom, it pops up and we have everything that we need to do and talk about the time saving. It's incredible. Plus it's more accurate.
But the
So,
people that come after
but the
you, they're
cyber
really
attack-
good at following those pathways.
yeah. And I actually know, I don't, to be honest with you, I know nothing about like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
all of
question that we'd have
I'm
to
just-
ask the other
I know the
people.
concepts of everything. I don't do anything. So I just know where it's going and how it's happening. That we just had SimQuest out of Keene. We contracted that. We've been working with them for probably 6 months trying to get this situated. We just, I think, finally got our final document. We'll bring it here. We have we've developed a response, what do you call it, an emergency response plan for cyber attack, things of that nature. And so we now have a process and a policy, and that person from SimQuest, which is a bigger organization toward the Keene Brattleboro area, has been working with Mike. It was one of those recommendations that we got from a couple of years ago with the Atom Group. And so we now have that in place, and that actually will spell out what the levels of backup we have are.
Well, and if I understand correctly, a form would be created in a certain software. It would follow the channels through the software. Upon completion, it gets brought into this other program that's designed for storage. We have a lot of uploading from student services, other departments, where they're uploading in the storage service. So it's again, we could get a more solid answer for the board, but as I understand it, they're kind of different softwares that work in tandem and kind of help each other. And it's, you go from one thing to another spot.
Yeah, it's the IT SAU 47 Jaffrey Ranch Cooperative School District IT Disaster Recovery Plan. And so I'll make sure that it's finalized. I think it got finalized when I was gone last week, but we should be able to show this with.
So this is an old guy's story.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we first started getting computers really into our work in the mid-80s, right?
Mhm.
And by like 1990, the computers actually had like hard drives and things like that. But we had backup plans, tape backups and everything, and they regularly failed. It was like something that you didn't think about, and so you always had a backup plan in place, but there were flaws. And now, this is, I'm not trying to be a naysayer. I think we have to go forward, whether we're taking risks or not, because you can't just sit still. But I think it's important to be aware these, the cyber attackers are really smart, and some of them are malicious too. I mean,
Something so simple as your bank account. When was the last time you balanced a checkbook, People just don't do it anymore. They trust, it's all online. See every penny you spend.
In our day, John, they had tape farms and hard drives back up to today. When you do it on the cloud, there's so much encryption involved. It's it's not like take this file and back it up. You got to encrypt it or you transport it.
We've got multiple layers of encryption going on. Doesn't mean that it couldn't be.
I was listening last week to a tech report, and I think it was Oracle got smacked. I mean, the really big guys. Now, of course, the people who are going after those kind of companies are not the kind that we have to worry about because they're not interested in us. But you get a smart student, they'll
You
get
want
after
to know
you.
about the school, they can do it.
Yeah.
Well, ransomware is a thing. I mean, it's just ransomware. Schools have been shut down. Right? I believe this is certainly towns, municipalities have been shut down in exchange, they hope, for money. Baltimore, for instance.
Yeah.
Has been shut down, I think, a couple times. So it's not just getting whether or not somebody can do a series of keystrokes and then find out what my kid's grades are. It's whether or not they could shut us down in order to presumably try to squeeze some dollars out of us.
Some of the students who have come out of here have done amazing things in the technology world, right? And that 3D printing stuff, kids who've come out of here who've been, they were construction workers doing concrete. Next thing you knew, they're like using 3D printers to create, I don't know, kids can be smart.
Jen Horn is on the digital side, and she said that she could speak to it maybe a little bit more than we're able to. I don't know to what degree beyond, but if you guys would be willing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll work on putting her right on. And while I get her on, one of the things that I was also going to say about the whole process with the digitizing of forms and things like that, we recently had somebody go on one of the parent groups on Facebook, and they mentioned that the ease of process for updating their contact information, forms and information for students was a lot easier this year, being able to do it online instead of being given a packet of information to be sent home and have to do that. So we're also hearing that not only is it helping the staff side, but also the student family side of things as well.
And we're pretty close to signing a contract with Alma, which will be the beginning of the end of Web to School. Because Web to School is a clunky tool, and still doing the online is better with that.
And Jen should be able to speak at this point.
Great.
Hi. So
Hi.
I'm not sure that I can answer you specifically, but what I can tell you is we did a lot of research before we moved over to using an online platform. We contract with a place called DocStar. They have a number of checks and balances, so we contract with them as an outside server. They hold things in a couple of different places. They have to follow a number of different RSDAs to make sure that they're meeting the safety requirements and the confidentiality requirements. And generally, the safety of online storage exceeds the safety of fire or, I don't know, flooding. So
We haven't had floods.
we don't typically lose things to flood. So I think to Charlie's point, you're absolutely correct. Anything could happen at any time. The chances of somebody hacking into the firewalls and servers, it's safer than if somebody really wanted to walk into our buildings and gather the information. So I feel like it's a safer process, frankly, and more accurate representation and accurate storage than file storage.
And Jen, can you speak briefly about the processes you've implemented for, like, when you work with parents and have to get documents signed and make sure that you're meeting the requirements of the law on the dates and so forth when things have to be done, and then, you know, all of that, just real fast, like, you know, 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, it's hands down. We are living in a totally different world in special ed. One of the things we just talked about in our office actually is we were going to ask Mike if he could see how much money we spent 2 years ago on photocopies versus last year. I can't even imagine how much money we saved on photocopies and paper. The process that we use a couple different things. We use DocStar, which is where we save all of our documentation. Again, that contracted company that double and triple saves and protects our information. And we also use Frevo, which is part of our contracted service. We've created, I suppose I could let you guys see me. I really can't. We've created a whole bunch of different forms that allow us to, if we're sitting in a meeting and we need to have paperwork signed within, we sit in the meeting and we say, this is a form that has to be signed in order for us to move forward. So many of our meetings are on Zoom now, which also we've had way better parent participation because they can come at any time of the day for a short meeting without having to drive to our meetings. But the difficulty then is getting them the paperwork. We now, during the meeting, can send them a form. They can sign it on their phone. They get the form, they read through it, they sign it with their finger, they send it back to us. They get an email immediately that has the form they signed, any backup documentation that was attached. We get an email with the signed form and the backup documentation. And the way that we can route things, we have it all go to the case manager or whoever was doing the paperwork, and a copy also goes to a backup email system. So if it falls through the cracks somewhere and a case manager's like, I don't know what happened to it, or I didn't get it, we get another copy that goes directly to our whole student services file. We've also then we then put that information into DocStar, so it's offsite stored, and then we have on-site Google files for every single student that has all of that information in it too, and then it can go from one special ed teacher to the next as they move up in grades of all of their information. So we've just totally changed the way we do things. The best part of all of that is when we have students move out or even move in, but when they move out of district, we'll have another district request records. And in the past, that could take a couple of days to find all of their records, to pull all their staples. Then we have to make a photocopy of all of it. Now all we have to do is email the people requesting records and say, do you want them in hard copy or electronic? If they want a hard copy, we hit print. And if they want it electronic, we just have to forward them files. So we're talking, for each student that needs records sent, we're talking a good 5 to 10 hours of saved time because it's an email. And then the other exciting thing is we will have places looking for records, like somebody who graduated 3-4 years ago, or did this person ever have records? And it takes me 30 seconds to type in a person's name and say, here are the records I have on that person, or we don't have any special ed records. It's just, it's unbelievable.
And so that allows others, that's the last kind of thing, that allows the SAU to be a better resource to everyone out there, so that they can make their jobs more effective as well. And so looking at all those areas, how can we, this is like, how can the SAU continue to be better customer service oriented, be able to help streamline things, find money, find partnerships, whatever it is that we can do in order to get them, so that the people who are at the levels of where it all matters can do their jobs, can create, can feel like they have some autonomy, can work together, certainly within the parameters of moving forward together. You know, you don't just do things willy-nilly. That's bad. But still, that's the idea of what we're trying to move toward.
And I don't know, I mean, I don't know if Jen's still there, but like, just from an ease perspective, we're talking about losing teachers, keeping teachers. How much better for special ed is it to hire somebody and be like, listen, we have this. I mean, it's daunting, the amount of work, like she said, the copies, the quick run downstairs and copy this and come back and get it signed, like, it's crazy. And so for her to be able to now say, to listen to her say, you know, that I can't imagine how much that's taken off of her plate and all special ed teachers' plates to just focus more on the kid and not so much on, oh my gosh, where's this paper? And I gotta bring it for here and there and copy it. I can't imagine. So it's phenomenal.
It also helps us administratively from my desk, I can log into and look at the shared Google folder and tell us case manager, here are the pieces you're missing. I can help you edit your pieces. Here are the pieces I can do for you. And so I can do that from my desk.
Yeah, so amazing.
It's just the time savings aspect of it has been phenomenal. It is
And
a
for
learning
you, like,
curve.
sorry, what?
It's a learning curve. I mean, it's that learning how to do it all electronically has been harder for some than others, but it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, for you as a hiring piece, it just seems so much better. What a bonus to say, well, we do have this in place. Really good.
Thank you, Jen.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Jen.
And that's what I have. It was, there was a lot there. But I fear this is still only such small pieces of it that we just needed to do some things in chunks as opposed to, you know, delving into everything so deeply. Because this is still a lot.
Thank you, Ruben. Any other questions? Then,
I have a question, but it doesn't have to do with these slides.
That's here.
Just kind of asking about scheduling and pieces with the students, like coming back to the school. There's a lot of students out there who don't, I mean, we went through a whole long talk of how we were going to have the students were going to have a step up day. It was like, it sounded amazing. Everybody was excited about it, to a point where now we're a couple weeks before school starts. Many students don't have schedules. They're getting anxious. Teachers didn't have rosters. No summer reading went out for all those AP classes. I feel like they're starting behind. Teachers not having that information when I had thought it was going out. I don't remember the date on that step up day to be smooth and beautiful. And then here we are. Nobody has anything.
Yeah, no, my understanding was that things have gone out, but I don't know if that's the case.
I think scattered. I've heard a few. I mean, my daughter doesn't have her schedule, and there's a few other kids who don't.
I do know that, I think we talked about this, maybe it was even the last time, or maybe it was in a session or whatever like that, we had at one of our community meetings. That the web to school messed up the scheduling. It has been extremely hard to work with it. Middle school, I think, was done very early, and that's because they did it by hand. Because web to school wasn't working, but they really wanted to make sure that the web to school was going to do the high school scheduling properly, because it's supposed to, you know, take into consideration, or you got 5 people over here at this period, 6 people who want this class at this period, and people to kind of juggle and narrow it down to just a few. They've been working around the clock trying to get it right, and I think it's close. My understanding from talking to them today was, I thought that whatever they had it pretty much done, minus one. My understanding was one freshman, maybe social studies class or something like that, that they're trying to work with. But apart from that, we're getting rid of the school.
So web to school messed it up to the
Web
point
to
where
school has messed up a lot of things, and we've been over the years. But this is, the more we try to do, the more complicated we make things, I suppose you could say, or it's just not, it's not meant to do it, or it's not intuitive, perhaps.
hasn't it been used for a few years though, web to
It's been
school?
used for 15 years here. Yeah, but I don't know. it explains why, in the past years, a lot of the scheduling was done on what they call a war board. They would do it by hand.
Mm,
I don't think they use it and then they just plugged it into the system. Whereas this we needed it to be, because of the restructuring effort and getting things tighter, you want everything to be balanced
mhm.
just right. The software should be able to do that. By and large, and then, shift the few around. But that's where I know they were having significant issues with that, where in some cases it was like duplicating kids' schedules and, and then other kids' schedules were wiped out and it was just back and forth for the high school. So it was, David and his crew would be able to explain it a lot better than I is. I know the
Mhm,
some of the conversations.
mhm. I guess I'm just like
Yeah,
thinking about between the students anxious and the teachers
Yeah.
not having the availability to get summer work out, and then here you go with, let's say kids get their schedule within the next week or so.
sure.
If there's issues, there's gonna be a lot right at the beginning of school when they start, and there doesn't seem the urgency to get this stuff out to them. So
I
that this
think there's,
doesn't
I think there's
happen.
urgency to get that stuff out. I think it's, but they have to get information that's as accurate as possible. Otherwise you have a bigger problem. No, the urgency's there.
And this
Kids receive theirs
Alma
as-
is gonna
Yeah.
hopefully
Hmm.
correct this going forward. This new program, Alma,
It should be a much stronger.
yeah, and is that tied to our
It
learning
will,
management system? Is that?
yeah, we'll be able to probably have them tied together. More importantly, it's gonna tie into the state's data system. So we're gonna be able to report our information that we have to do every single year in a much more streamlined manner.
We had this problem last year.
We have issues with it every single year, to a certain degree. But
Well, I highlighted because of the block scheduling, so now you have less options to put people.
yeah,
And I also think that it's the perception because the plan was to release the schedules before school was out. That set the expectation up really high. No, I don't have any.
it should have been able to be done. They were on track with everything. They had met with all the students. They had everything. They did not dream that it was gonna be as much of a nightmare as it was.
Obviously, because they
Yeah.
wouldn't have said it. I don't remember when kids got schedules last year, but just having that expectation.
It's not far off from where they're at right now, but our goal is to have the schedules in their hands before they leave school, and that has to happen this coming year.
Mhm.
And, it's not close to ideal.
All right, well, thank you. If there's no other questions, why don't we move to the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you,
Second that.
Paul. Thank you, Christine. Okay, all those in favor?
I
Aye. So that passes 5-0. And then we want to do the minutes for August 1st.
didn't I already.
Minutes of August 1st.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Paul. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you, Kim. All right. Good. And now we move on to item number 6, CDC changes to COVID-19. Ruben, I know you've already spoken to this, so
We've done this, and so it's a matter of whether you want more discussion.
Did you want a vote on the recommendation?
What was your recommendation?
Treat it like that.
Not to have a reopening. plan.
Not to have, okay. that's what I
At this
thought.
time until the state gives us more
Something
guidance.
comes up. Yeah,
I think anytime you start to put in place, there's a,
do you need,
there's a domino effect when you start to tighten things. And again, if you don't tighten things enough, you don't have the ability to get the accurate data that you need as well. And right now, it seems like the state of New Hampshire is treating it like other illnesses.
so do you need a motion or
I don't think so, because if we do nothing, we're just following suit with New Hampshire.
kind of following what was recommended anyways? Unless you're more comfortable, I don't know.
Well, our plan is lapsed because it was specific to the school year, so we don't have anything in place. So if you guys don't vote, it's just, there's nothing. You know,
No
one way
way
or another.
impacts ESSER funds, not having a reopening framework.
Well, I asked, because I thought for certain we had to have a reopening framework for that, but I've so far been informed no, and the Department of Ed's really hard to get a hold of. And so during the summertime, so I'll keep on looking, and if it's going to be important, then I'll present a very washed down, kind of, truncated plan that will have the basics in there.
Or if the school nurses come back and say, we need this.
Well, yeah, I think that I'd feel more comfortable listening to them next week. Yeah.
So we're better off just holding off.
Okay. So if there's no other questions on that, let's move on to item number 7, the 2022-23 school handbooks.
I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the RMS student and parent handbook, the RMS staff handbook, the JGS parent and student handbook, JGS staff handbook, JGS RMS substitute handbook, the CHS JRMS learning and writing handbook, the CHS JRMS faculty and staff handbook, the CHS JRMS discipline handbook, and the CHS JRMS student activities handbook.
Great, thank you, Charlie.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Christine. Is there any discussion?
A lot of reading.
It is. Was there a committee for this?
You mean a committee to develop it?
Yeah, is this all just like old stuff that's
No,
just,
the new.
It's revised every summer.
okay,
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, if you were to read it, sometimes there's revisions because of new laws, sometimes it's a revision because there was a lack of clarification beforehand.
Okay.
It needed to be clarified. Usually around behavior or something to that effect.
mhm,
And some things go away if they just aren't good practice.
mhm. Okay,
All right, well then, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So those are adopted, 500. Thank you. And then we have action items.
So the first action item, I believe you were sent information on. If not,
Yes.
we can put it up there.
You want me
I
to
don't
build it up?
have a problem with it going up on the screen. Basically, we am going to really start this year off well and together, and to focus on again, community collaboration, communication. Wanted to start off with some team building type of work with our staff, not just teachers, but all the educational staff and so forth. We typically have a time frame, usually between half an hour and an hour, where we also get together. We haven't for a couple of years, but this year to reinstate that practice of me and a school board member for that matter, if they so choose, to address the entire staff. And so SAU, but everyone, you don't get very many opportunities to do that. So it's like a once a year type of situation. So we were looking into doing it off-site over at the Camp Monadnock over there, where we've in the past had some good relations and have been able to hold some events there and so forth. When we got the pricing back for that, it turned out to be just something we couldn't do. The pricing was $1,200 for using their people to help with our team building exercises. It was a $20 per person day fee that needed to be used. So multiply that by 250 individuals. $10 per head for lunch if they were going to provide lunch and so forth. It all turned between $6,500 and $8,000 to do that. That's not where we were going to go. So what we determined was, hey, we can do the team building internally. We'll do this all at RMS. RMS has the infrastructure facilities wise. That's really better than most places right now. They have the gymnasiums larger than the Pratt. It has the field just on the other side of that. The JRSSA and JREA like to break off after the whole district event. And so some can stay in the cafeteria, go to the cafeteria while the others stay in the gymnasium. We also can have a barbecue out there if we wanted to as a group, and we can do team, but it has enough space for team building type of activities that would be led by Heather and the individuals that have been trained on the web and link training that they do with the learners and so forth. So taking away that cost altogether. And so last week I had Jen Horn and I think maybe one or two others go and research what type of cost could it be to do some sort of like a barbecue. If we were to look at, say, Market Basket or what's that, Costco, is it? Market Basket is the cheapest, actually, as it turned out to be. And we figure that between $5.50 and $6 per head, we would be able to, feed the entire SAU family for the same, not just the business office SAU, but all the schools, all the teachers and everything like that. So about 250 individuals times 6 really is the idea. And so to have this one-time exception to pay for this, I would do it out of the curriculum lines. I think it has a lot to do with supporting our curriculum and instruction movement that we're going forward, because I do think collaboration and togetherness and teamwork is vital to the betterment of all of that. I think it sends a good message. It starts off the year in a good way. And so I'm asking for that as the policy allows for me to ask for it.
Okay, thank you, Ruben. Any discussion?
I think it's a great idea. I love that this is gonna happen. I know Charlie said it used to just be breakfast to the morning program and then back to your classrooms, but
We would have coffee and maybe some other types of stuff that would be donated before the beginning from, I think, this school's parent teacher student.
PTSA.
Yes, association. Yeah, thank you.
Didn't we have some organization that used to do it?
In the past, we've had the Jaffrey Ringe Foundation, or the I think it's the Jaffrey Ringe Educational Foundation has taken some donations and done some like a breakfast in the morning time. We haven't been in that type of contact with them. It's been more, their focus is really on providing teachers with innovation grants. That's what they're trying to use their money with right now.
Well, from my perspective, I think it's worthwhile from a morale perspective. I think it's worthwhile from a recognition perspective. The issue I have with it is the fact that when I was in high tech, and we were downsizing. we didn't provide any of these perks to the staff at all. And the same thing, I mean, we went into a default budget and we had to eliminate positions. And we're in a situation where we have to eliminate positions. I find it hard to justify that we're gonna have expenses for non-educational purposes. And I went into a facilities meeting today and I found out that we're looking at over the default budget, we're looking at a $300,000 shortfall. And that doesn't include supplies. Supplies are running up at least 20% higher than what they were last year, and which is well above the default budget. So from my perspective, I find it hard to justify from a taxpayer perspective an expenditure that really wasn't budgeted and isn't in the spirit of what the taxpayers told us relative to spending this year. So from that perspective, I find it, might be a minority of one, but I find it difficult to support.
Where can I ask, like, so where does the money come from? If we're under budget, if we don't have money, if we're cutting, if we're doing this, where, let's say we say yes, where do we come up with the money from? What happens? Just because I don't know.
So I would look at the curriculum. I mean, the only line I have that I can do anything to out of this is either supply lines or, but it's, not interested in touching supply lines at this point in time. Or the curriculum budget lines. And so that we use for people to do extracurricular work during the summertime, after school. Sometimes it's for team leader stipends, things of that nature that we're doing. So it's all curriculum based. So I would say my argument here would be that for $1,500 for 250 for the entire district, that there's value that you're getting at $6 per person that is going to help fuel the energy and the work and the camaraderie and togetherness to be able to accomplish a lot of these things.
Mhm.
And so maybe I don't, maybe one of the things that we're doing for the curriculum team is scaling it down because it's clearly too broad last year. And just making it an inquiry team this year, focus on getting the data systems set in the district before trying to focus other things. So I don't need as many, maybe I have 10 people on that committee as opposed to 15, for instance. So that's what I would do. So I would make the changes there.
Okay, so there would be.
I'd have to give up something to gain something.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, and it would be that, like the curriculum, because it kind of.
It ties, to me, it ties in,
Mhm,
obviously indirectly.
mhm,
But as does team building, ties in
mhm, mhm.
indirectly. On the flip side, we know that the more we are together and moving in the same direction and bonded and feel appreciated, and we start the year off well that way, that it can carry us through in a pretty positive direction. Get a lot of new staff coming in this year. We have old staff, but in new positions this year, and so I think celebrating, each other is a important thing to do.
So you think that there is a spot that it can come from? Now, how will taking money out of the curriculum affect, like, let's say if the teachers need, I don't know if it's PD's part of that or whatever, like, what does that take away? Does that take away from their PD or
Sure.
other?
So a lot of the large scale professional development, I've been able to utilize Title II grants.
Okay,
Like for instance, did you have an education committee this past?
Yeah,
week? And-
we did.
And did they talk about responsive classroom? A little bit?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, he did.
So that was all paid out of Title II. And that was, again, this group of people, they said, hey, we want to go with responsive classroom. oh man, it would be great if we didn't have to wait an entire year, and said, okay, let's find out. Nikki went and found out all the information about the money. We were able to get that. Excuse me, a grant, get it all situated and done this year. So that didn't come out of our budget. In other areas, we have ESSER funds. I've actually taken some of the funds out of my curriculum lines, given them to the facilities lines for the use of for the payment of the person who's overseeing everything. And then I took that money that was in ESSER out and so moved it into for curriculum. So I have another 50,000-60,000 that I can do for certain types of curriculum through ESSER 3 if we want to utilize that, which I would intend to do. So I'm in an oak. I've been juggling different things around to make sure that we have what we need and to make sure that John got what he did too for his. I gave everything last year, all my curriculum out the window, went to facilities, but that was just, we needed to do that. This one I think is proactive and I have other funds to be able to fund the work that we need to do this year.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions or?
I just want everyone to know that I agree with you. It's very much value provided by doing. But that's my perspective. I think that
I see both
I look at
sides.
the constituency, it might be a different story.
This
That's
is-
the two representatives.
This is a pretty scaled down lunch, though. It's not fine down, it's not fine
$6 a
dining.
person is pretty cheap.
Yeah, it's not fine dining at the Monadnock camp. And who's gonna be doing the cooking? I mean, are we,
Yeah, so myself, some other people, you know,
I mean, this is-
licensed, you know, to cook.
They
Yeah.
told me you were doing it.
oh, yeah, right. You don't wanna eat the food
Yeah,
I grill.
no, I think that
I'll volunteer to
So-
help.
actually, that was mentioned that, you know, it'd be great to have the school board there as well.
Cooking burgers, dude.
Eating that.
Well, definitely you when I cook.
Eating one, but if you wanted the cookers, something like that, yeah, to be there.
If you need cookers, King can get it, right?
I can throw a heck of a party. Don't you worry. We can get some burgers cooked.
Okay. So, yeah, if you're interested, I just think the more togetherness, the more we all bond together
I
and
agree.
take part, the better.
Knowing the climate, I think that it's more than important.
It's this is always a complex issue, but the way I came to think about it when I was managing a program like this is you look at what your staff is going to cost you for that day. And I'm looking at our staff. Per diem rates are around $350. We're gonna have 160 teachers, maybe, something like that, plus support staff, administrators.
I see.
You've got $80,000 worth of salary there for a day. Or 70, I don't know, it's a lot. And if you,
It's over 130,000.
okay.
Yeah.
There you go, see, I was being conservative.
I think teachers alone is 107 or 111 last year.
So
Having an extra PD.
anything that helps get some more out of them, you know, in terms of benefits, that's where I came around to eventually, and networking is huge. You talk about new teachers, the chance they're gonna get to interact with a master teacher or more experienced teacher. These are valuable, really valuable moments that you get something pretty important.
It creates an innovative ecosystem.
Well, it's important. I think the other piece is that we're able to provide our own intern. Another element of all this, and it will be written into a document that you'll get, but is focusing on, it's kind of an underlying theme, focusing on building upon your strengths as an organization. And so when we look at, let's have these people facilitate team building and activities, like, well, why can't we do that in-house? We have people skilled at doing that. We have, and isn't it more powerful if colleagues are helping one another, you know, build, as opposed to someone that they are not associated with.
Well, not only that, as soon as they have a question, they know exactly who to go to and they're right there. And they've already had that relationship built.
Right.
Super important. I love it.
So I think, we're saving money that way if we were going to spend money on that in the first place. I would, once we saw 2,000 and above, it's not gonna happen.
Mhm. Yeah. What did we do? Did we?
All the
Okay.
responsive classroom for 30 people over 4 days was 36,000, so that's very pricey, which is why
Yeah.
if we get a grant, this grant with the state, all that PD starts coming into place and it's all paid for. Again, we'll find out hopefully by the end of the month. If
Yeah.
not, we still have a grant through the Department of Ed on the same topic,
Mhm,
just not as much support.
mhm.
Okay,
Do we need a motion on this?
I think we do.
I'd like to make a motion to allow curriculum funds to be spent on the August 25th staff PD day to allow for the purchasing of lunch for staff.
I second.
Are you capping that or that's $6 per head or?
Oh. Well, what if it's $6.50?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Are we throwing a cap on it? Because if you give them,
Yeah.
give them permission. there's no
There goes
limit.
curriculum money. Put me in charge.
We're gonna have one fantastic
Yeah.
hot dog. Yeah, I think just what's there.
Is
That's
there a
six-
dollar amount?
$6 per person right there.
I mean, here's the breakdown.
there,
If you
right
can just
there.
roll up to the breakdown, just so that they can see that it was.
Alright.
It was developed. this
I had a little concern about this because I saw that it was one hot dog or one hamburger. And usually
Or-
at these things, I usually have a hot dog and
Hey, have a hot dog before you leave your house and then a hamburger when you get there.
It's part of the negotiations. So you might say to someone, hey, I don't want my potato salad. Would you take that? In exchange, I get your hot dog.
all right.
The lunchbox sharing. I got Twinkies. What you got?
All right, so we should cap that at $6 per person.
For the budget, okay.
I second it.
Are we capping it at 15, 17, whatever it is?
What's the total? Can you?
It's up top.
Oh, I'm sorry. 15, 12. 39.
It could be a dollar amount. I can't read it from here, so.
That dollar amount is
39.
1512.39 or $1,512.39.
And that's what we'll cap it at. Hopefully we don't hire.
And
many
if
more
it,
people.
if it goes over for any reason, you can just take it out of the superintendent's slush fund.
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
Jen just sent
Just
me
kidding,
a
that was-
message and she said that I don't. Trying to see where it says. She says that she had proposed for 1550 in total. Let me see if
Jen
it's-
Horn,
Yeah, she's the one that put this
She's
together.
the one who put this together.
1550
Inflation.
Prices are going up.
already.
Oh, she's proposing that now. Sorry. it was in the- she's proposing it.
Wait, can you, so instead of what? Instead of 1512, it should
Instead
be
of 15, 12,
1550?
39 proposing, Jen wants to talk. Is that okay? All right, Jen, you should be back on.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for moving forward with this. My hope, I'm cheap, and so my hope is that we spend less than this, but you never know when you walk into Market Basket if the costs that I looked at 2 weeks ago are and priced all of this are going to be accurate. So if we could cap it at 1550 as the total amount, because I'm also capping, I'm at 250 staff, but I'm not 100% sure we have 250 staff. We might have 256 staff. So all of this is a rough estimate on 250. I don't believe I'll spend that much. I'll do my very best to price chop everything I can. But if we could have a cap of $1,550, then that's a pretty even. I'd hate to do $1,512.39. And then all of those salads are taxed. And we're not prepared to pay for that. Or, so that's my fear.
And Market Basket allows us to do a PO, is that correct?
Yes, so that makes it, we would just have a PO for 1550. And they can bill directly to school. It doesn't have to come out of anybody's pocket to start.
Okay, so is that acceptable for
That's acceptable.
the motioners?
Acceptable.
Okay, all right, thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
It makes sense.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
opposed? And, okay, all right, thank you. So that passes 4-1. All right, very good. And then we're gonna move on to an unassigned fund balance retention.
Carrie is here, if you have any questions, can be answered.
Okay. Good, and I don't know if everybody had a chance to read Carrie's explanation. All right, Ruben, you want to just bring us through it quickly, or should we have Carrie do that?
Yeah, Carrie is the most efficient out of
Okay,
us. I mean, in short, you're able to retain the whole 5%.
Right.
Is my summary of it, but I'm sure there's more to it.
Yes, hi. So that's basically it. The district has an unassigned fund balance amount for the end of fiscal year 2022 of $1,038,720. Of that, $884,038 was what the board retained from last fiscal year, the previous fiscal year in 2021, plus an additional $154,682 from fiscal year 2022. Of that amount, the district can retain up to 5% of the current year fiscal year's net assessment. So that means the school board can choose to retain up to $901,170. So that's what I'm recommending that the school board vote to authorize. At the bottom of my memo is the action that would be taken by the school board to retain a specific dollar amount up to that $901,170. And that can be used for any purpose that the district needs throughout FY 2023, as long as the school board holds a public hearing prior to the expenditure to discuss what the intent of the money is to be spent on.
okay, Charlie,
I'd like to make a motion that the Jaffrey Range School Board authorize a retention of $901,170 of the June 30, 2022 general fund unassigned fund balance for the purpose of having funds on hand to use as a revenue source for expenditures or to be used as a revenue source to reduce the tax rate, all in accordance with RSA 198:4.
I'll second that.
okay, thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Paul. Any discussion? No, hearing no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? None. Okay. Good, thank you. And thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
All right, board committee updates.
We have an education meeting. I can go first.
Yeah, please.
And it was really good. There was just 3 of us here, Charlie, myself, and Mr. Fraser. And he had a great presentation. I'm sure he'd be willing to let anybody see that. It was on the MTSSB, right? And he talked about how they looked at Choose Love and decided that wasn't great, and that they did look at responsive classroom, and there's so in the tier 1 things looked good for I think it was responsive classroom, and then there was step 2, like for positive actions and responsive classrooms. response class was the one they liked the best, but they're still looking at like kind of melding some things together. I believe that's what he was looking at, and he had a great presentation. I guess there was a fantastic turnout, like you had said too, for the
For summertime.
yeah,
Yeah, actually, a lot of our new elementary teachers were able
Yeah.
to take part in that, which I think is really important.
yeah,
And a good mix of veterans as well.
right. And from what I hear,
Some
like,
people have had the training before, so
Yeah.
it's helpful.
yeah, and from what I hear, teachers seem excited and on board. I mean, as long as, I mean, I trust David, and he seemed, because I asked him specifically, how did you feel this was received? And as far as I could hear, the teachers were excited about it and on board with it, and that's one of the best things you can have if you're trying to move forward with it. So it looked good. So they're still moving. I guess tier 1 I felt was a little bit more solid, and they're still moving forward with the tier 2 stuff. So we'll probably have more on that later, but like this was a lot of work.
Yeah. Sounds like it's great.
Our next meeting is September 8th at 4:30. And we did kind of talk a little bit about just Charlie and I, that we know that we have to review and talk about one of the policy JFAB, but we're going to have to, that's going to be a longer discussion. So we did bring it up, but it has to be brought up a little bit more and discussed a lot more.
Great, thank you. Okay,
So you want me to go to facilities?
sure, that would be great, Paul.
So facilities committee met today. Majority of our meeting, we discussed the potential of having a solar farm installed over on what is that, 119?
The property on Route 202.
Yeah, right on 202. So we're talking about making a special committee just for that one action, that we can then present stuff to the facilities committee, and then we would also bring it to the board afterward. I think at the meeting, both myself and Christine were,
Volunteered.
yeah, we
Voluntold.
no, we're willing participants
Yeah.
to be part of the committee. I don't know if anyone else wanted to, and then we would also like to set our first meeting date relatively soon, I would assume.
Yes.
But I don't know if we need 3 people for that, or is it just no specific number on that one?
Smaller the better, right?
Right.
There were approximately a dozen people that attended, including 4 from Ringe and 2 from Jaffrey.
Yep.
And it was pretty knowledgeable. Actually, 3 from Jaffrey, because former teacher Marjorie Clark was there, had some very good questions.
Yep.
It was quite a knowledgeable group. Really made us all think.
But and then our next meeting would be what, the 19th at 10 a.m. next month.
Yes, although I think we are going to try to schedule a meeting. We did not set a date, but we're going to try and schedule an interim facilities committee meeting.
Correct.
We did have, I think about 18 items, and
Yeah.
we went through a half dozen of them or so after the discussion relating to the solar project. But there's a lot more to be done, and specifically the HVAC project. We
didn't
have
even
to
touch
get
on that today, really.
So I think that Christine and Paul are gonna coordinate that committee. Is that
It's an exciting
the
opportunity.
subcommittee? Yeah, thank you.
It-
No,
It
appreciate it.
provoked a little anxiety because I've never done anything at this level, and I would hate to be the cause of it not working, of it not succeeding, but yet it's an incredible learning opportunity and an opportunity for the school district and the community beyond. So just gotta put my fears aside and charge ahead. Thank you.
Right. No, well, agreed. I think it is an opportunity. I think you two are gonna do a great job. Is my guess.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of committees that I'm sure have not met over the summer because, our goals, wellness. I don't think have met in the last couple of weeks, and policy committee, Lisa's not here tonight, but I know that,
We're meeting Thursday.
okay,
Wait, we're meeting this Thursday,
Yep.
the 18th. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
My bad.
morning meeting.
No, didn't that get,
No,
she sent out
that's
an email and
finance.
said no,
You got switched back.
She changed it. back.
she changed it back.
Okay. 4:30. Then what's the first meeting of the day then?
Finance at 8 AM.
Finance at 8 AM. That's the morning meeting. Okay.
Yeah, so finance hasn't met since the last meeting, but we're meeting this Thursday at 8 AM.
So real quick, I don't know who else is on the goals committee that hasn't met and isn't meeting yet, right?
It's meeting next Thursday, I believe it is.
It is the 25th.
I believe it's.
Okay,
25th.
that's what I have on my calendar, but I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know. Okay.
Daisy's on that.
What? Daisy?
Is she on that?
I don't
I
remember.
believe she is.
I am on that
And Lisa,
in the SAU office in your office.
yeah.
Okay.
okay. And communication,
Communication, working on finalizing committee members so that we can meet. Obviously, we have the school board reps, we have some of the staff, we're working on more staff, and then once we get back into the swing of things, we'll probably set an introductory meeting with the goal of having that first kind of official meeting that we've discussed being probably, I don't know, hopefully sometime September, either end of September, early October would be the hope. And then that would be quarterly from then on out.
okay. Great, thank you, Nick. And I think that's it. Have I missed any? We've got them all. And that would bring us up to public comments too. Nick, do we have people online at this point?
We have the same two people that we've had that have spoken to their individual pieces throughout this, being Jen Horn and Carrie Broderick. So I
Okay,
guess it would be up to the board. Jen's a president. Carrie is not, so it'd be up to the board to open that up to everybody. But I guess for the people on, it would be a question of raising hands.
I would say you could just ask them if they have any comments they'd like to make at this time, and if
All right,
not,
well, I guess if either of you want to make a comment, feel free to raise your hand and we can pull you back through. All right, I'm not seeing it.
okay. All right, very good. And then we'll move on to board matters. Does anyone have a board matter that they would like to raise? So I think the one thing I'd like to throw out there, I guess, is that it seems like we should still continue to work on getting our calendars working, effectively, so that we, pick up on events that the school is doing, and so that we as board members can participate when appropriate, but also.
Oh, those live ones?
Hmm?
The live calendars are talking about?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I know what
Right,
you're talking
right.
about. Yeah. Mhm.
it's from time to time, I will hear either from Ruben or from somebody else in the school community about some of the good things that are going on, and I think, boy, I should have stopped in, but I always feel like I'm hearing bad things, too late or something. And
Because you weren't invited, John. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing.
Wednesday at the tennis courts. The entire SAU has been invited. I think that Heather will probably send out another email for pickleball. So if you are a pickleball enthusiast and you want to stop by,
There you go.
I
Great
I don't know
example.
what Football is.
Imagine if we missed that because we didn't know.
I know.
Imagine that.
So a couple of things. One of the things is that, Lisa and I were talking about changing our agenda. So at the beginning of the agenda, we have time to cover any of the, activities that were occurring within the next, in the current board member.
Oh.
Mhm.
Okay.
Another thing is that we are supposed to have a student rep on the school board. And that's
Oh.
another source of information that we should be getting as well.
When's the last time you had a student rep? 2 years ago? 3 years?
It just keeps growing.
2.5.
yeah, I would say a consistent one.
It's been
Would-
longer than that for a consistent,
three-
actively
three
participating.
consistently, yeah.
And what is that like? Is it like a senior? Do you guys go with like, what, how do you?
We had a couple who were sharing it for a while. They were juniors at the time, I think it was juniors or seniors.
Yeah, I mean, usually I know that the past couple, David's kind of spoken to student leadership at the middle high school and kind of, pulled them and had some people come through. We've had varying levels of success since I've been here, both as a board rep and as a, previously as a reporter. But I can reach out to David and see if he has any.
The statute says we're supposed to have a non-voting student body member.
Yeah, I think it at least says we have an option to. I don't know if it's like a
Yeah, I
requirement.
don't think it's a requirement, but I do think that this board has always wanted it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
No, it's great to hear the students' firsthand knowledge on a lot of these topics or what's going on.
I would be happy just even to hear from the student government if someone from each school could do a report annually, whether it's live or video or song, a poster, I mean, that would be really fun, puppet show. But what are the,
Government makes sense.
yeah, what are the needs they have? What do they want? What do they want?
Thoughts, concerns, anything, what's going on?
one point on the calendars, I say I'm trying to work with some of the staff members that we have, to continue to upgrade those so that at least on the public facing part, they are more interactive and more of that one-stop shop. I think we covered this 4 or 5 months ago, maybe, and we've made a couple steps toward progress. We've gotten to what would appear to be more stable people at each school handling them. Because while I monitor them and they get automatically uploaded, it's easier for the schools to actually say, okay, we know this is going on, we put it up. If the board decides that we want to change the agenda to add in some of those calendar items, that's fine. There are other options too, if you guys are interested in, because you can actually go onto the website and subscribe to those calendars, and those calendars can pull into your phone's existing calendar. You can also download our mobile app and you can select by school which schools you want to show through. And if you select all schools, you can click calendar there, and then you can just go into that one spot and it'll give you the rundown. So we can not only give you guys the information and that you can have it on your phone directly, but also if you guys wish, we can start putting it on the agenda as an item.
But that assumes that the information is in the calendar.
Yes, and there has been some struggle with trying to get, some schools are better than others, some put more information than others. There's been a lot of attempts to try to get a level of consistency where this is the template for what you want to do. It's not just saying, okay, we have this event on this day, but I'm not going to put a time. I'm not going to say where it is. I'm not going to give it any details. We want a calendar entry that says, this is the event, this is the day, this is the time, and the description box. If you're a family event, information that says, okay, your children, if they're participating in this chorus concert, they need to be here 30 minutes early, or they need to be here. Here's ticket information, here's whatever. That's the goal. But obviously I have to continue to work with some of the staff members that are handling these responsibilities to get it up to that level.
if we put it in the board meeting, it kind of puts pressure on everyone to implement that a little bit more, because then if we start seeing, oh, we missed this, why wasn't this on there?
Well, there were a lot of things that I kind of laxed up on due to COVID, just
Yeah.
understanding that people had a lot of other responsibilities. I'm gonna start working with the schools more actively to make sure that we're publishing information. I used to do monthly meetings with each school to make sure that we're able to publish things, make sure the calendars are up to date. I know that I haven't put it up online yet, but I know that RMS just recently redesigned their Thursday notes, and the goal behind that is to be more public sharing with information, like here's what different classrooms are doing, here are more pertinent events and things like that. All those get uploaded onto the individual school websites, so those can be found there. But the goal is just to continue to work and innovate and have more of this information out there so that it's easier to find. But if leadership of the board wants me to start putting, I don't know, district calendar, and I can just link to the calendar and we can just do a quick little 5-minute hit running through stuff, or if there's another way we want to do it, just let me know and I'm happy to.
Good. I think that Charlie mentioned that he and Lisa talked about the idea of bringing this up earlier in the meeting, and I think that starting next time we meet, why don't we give that a try and see how it works?
I like that.
I'll try to remember, and if it's not on there when I send out the draft, just, give me a little
Yeah.
kick and tell me to put it on there.
You bet.
Is there gonna be anything on there anyway? Does school summer time?
Schools have started uploading some stuff. I mean, again, the middle
Even the
school, high
beginning of
school is
school.
really good at getting a lot of stuff up there. And they have that level of detail. We're working a little bit more at the elementary schools. Elementary schools have just had a different system where it seems like they're more heavily reliant on their weekly newsletter.
Yeah.
It seems like that's kind of the expectation as we send out the newsletter, you read that there.
Mhm.
So we're just kind of trying to translate it into different spots.
Yeah, RMS's newsletter that was sent out today is matching their live calendar right now. So it's good.
Yeah, I had a talk with their school with Tracy, because I guess
Yeah.
she's taking over the calendar, and we talked about expectations and things like that. So
Okay.
it's good to
Okay.
know that it's,
Yeah, I was just noticing. Good.
yeah, this is the redesign. So information about web to school updates, welcome to the school year, information, letters and teacher assignments, bus routes. And then this is what Ruben had referenced with the like cleaning of the schools, showing, some of those spaces and innovations. And then again, you have that spot for upcoming events. So this is completely new redesign with different types of information than that community is used to seeing in that type of communication. So.
Okay. Thanks, and Ruben, you and I can discuss this question of student representation, and how we can make that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring that back next time we meet as well. Okay, very good. If there are no future items. We've talked about a bunch of future items tonight, haven't we? If there are no additional future items, then we just need a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
My second.
Great, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Kim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.